Triple G versus Kell Brook. You know, when this fight was first announced, I saw it online, and I thought it was one of those like one of those feelers that some fighters put out just to get a feel of, like when Floyd said he was going to fight Paulie Spadafora, just to get a gauge. And when he said he was going to fight Conor McGregor, just to get a gauge of what the Floyd does that a lot, just to get a gauge of what the public outcry would be as far as that fight, whether they were supported or not. I thought this was like a feeler, or like, just a joke, like somebody just falsely reporting on it or something, and it turned out to be true. And I'm like, wait a second. This is out of character for Triple G. And it's a good business move. You can't knock him for that. It's a good business move, but that's not what I tune in for. I want to be entertained. I want to see good competitive fights. Or I want to see two guys in a fair fight and one guy maul the other, which is what I usually get from Triple G. All right, he's fighting guys generally the same size as him, who he's going to maul, but it's still fun to watch. This is Triple G, he's going to maul Kell Brook, but he's fighting a welterweight. He's a huge welterweight. I forgot to mention that. He's a huge welterweight. He's not a small welterweight. He's not a medium welterweight. He's not above average welterweight. He's a huge welterweight. This guy walks around at about 250. He loses like 100 pounds in between before fights in training camp. He's a huge welterweight. I forgot to mention that. Look, I like Triple G a lot. I pushed him as much as anybody could possibly push him. I like Triple G, and I think this is an outlier. I think he'll do big things in the future. I think he's a young 34. He'll end up being, a Hall of Famer. I really believe that. But he's not above criticism. He's just not. And he should be criticized for this. Good business move. But once again, it's not what I tune in for. I came home tonight hoping to watch a good baseball game, and I come home and turn on ESPN, and there's a racial town hall meeting on. That's not what I tune in to a sports channel for. And watching crap fights is not what uncompetitive fights is not what I tune into boxing for. I want to see good fights. I want to see competitive fights on paper. And this isn't that. This isn't a competitive fight. It's not. It's just not. This fight doesn't make any sense. It makes business sense, but as far as boxing, like what is this going to solve? Kell Brook's not going to win. He gets a lot of respect from me. He's got a ton of he's got some balls on him to go step up 2 weight classes and fight the most feared man in boxing. And I understand the frustration of Triple G. I get it. Canelo grew a vagina overnight. He's saying 1.5 years I'll be ready for him, which translation, I hope he outgrows the division in 1.5 years. Danny Jacobs doesn't want to fight. 1.5 years, 2 years, I'll be ready. Yeah, right. Nobody at 154 has a personality besides Canelo, and they're all average fighters. So Triple G said he'll fight anybody from 154 to 168. That pretty much rules out 154 and 160 being any competitive fights for him. So I get why they have to get creative. I understand that. But why not get creative with fighters at 168? If you have to go out of your division to make an interesting fight just for one fight, because I understand you want to be a throwback fighter. A lot of people are criticizing him for staying at middleweight, but I understand it's a historic vision. It's a glamour division in boxing. You want to be a Marvin Hagler, Bernard Hopkins, and just defend and consolidate belts. I understand that, and I support that if that's what you want to do. And even Hagler and Hopkins went and fought smaller guys. I understand all that. Hopkins fought De La Hoya and Trinidad. Those guys came up and competed against Hopkins. But and Hagler fought Sugar Ray Leonard coming up. I understand that, but those guys coming up had distinct advantages on paper over those guys. Maybe Hopkins versus De La Hoya, you would say not so much, but you still looked on paper and you said, okay, I understand this. It's an intriguing fight. Makes sense. Does anybody look at this and say, Kell Brook has a power advantage over Triple G? We know he doesn't have a size advantage, so he has to make up for that in some kind of sort of way. Does anybody say Kell Brook is quicker than Triple G? Has better footwork than Triple G? Has a better jab than Triple G? Has a better chin than Triple G? Distinct advantages over him? Because maybe he has slight advantages in some of these departments. I wouldn't concede that because I'm very high on Triple G, and I'm not that high on Kell Brook. Based off of what I've seen, he has one big win against Sean Porter. He still has a lot to prove at welterweight. So maybe I'm just not as high on Kell Brook as other people, and maybe I'm too high on Triple G. I don't know. But I just see a huge gap, not only in size, but in talent. So this doesn't make any sense to me. It's a throwaway fight. It's a throwaway fight to me. And going back to this, I understand the business move. He wants to puncture the UK market, and they're going to make a ton of money off this fight. And it's going to sell out. I get all that. I understand it. But he could have done that against guys from the UK who have big names in the UK at 168 and are competitive fighters. And it would have been a competitive fight. He said he'd fight anybody from 154 to 168. He's got to back that up. He didn't say he'd fight anybody from 147 to 168. He said 154 to 168. And if there are guys who would be willing to come to the table at 168, if he's not going to fight anybody at 154 or 160, why not go to fight a guy at 168 instead of going all the way, staying at 160, but fighting a guy coming up all the way from 147? Man, just don't see it, man. He's not above criticism, and he deserves it here.